If you have ever felt more peaceful alone than close to the person you love, you are not broken. You are caught in a safety loop. Loneliness can start feeling safer than love when love has always come with fear, pressure, chasing, shutdown, or disappointment. And in anxious and avoidant dynamics, both people can be lonely for opposite reasons while still calling it connection. The avoidant person may feel lonely, but closeness feels like pressure. The anxious person may feel lonely, but losing access feels like abandonment. So one person hides inside distance, and the other stays inside a bond that keeps them emotionally hungry. That is the pattern. It looks like a relationship from the outside, but inside, both nervous systems are protecting themselves from different fears. The avoidant nervous system says, if I let someone too close, I may lose myself. The anxious nervous system says, if I let go, I may lose them completely. So both people choose a kind of loneliness that feels familiar, not because it feels good, because it feels known. And sometimes, what is known feels safer than what is healthy. This is why loneliness can become confusing. We usually think loneliness means being alone, but some of the deepest loneliness happens inside attachment. It happens when you have someone to text, but no one who can truly meet you. It happens when someone is physically present, but emotionally unavailable. It happens when the relationship exists, but your heart still feels like it is waiting outside. It happens when you can feel the bond, but not the safety. And because there is still contact, still history, still warmth sometimes, still possibility, you may keep telling yourself this cannot be loneliness. You may think, I am not alone. We are talking. We still care. There is still something here. But connection is not measured only by access. Connection is measured by whether your body feels emotionally met. If you have access to someone but still feel unseen, if you can reach them but cannot feel held by them, if the relationship keeps your hope alive while starving your need for presence, then you are not experiencing real connection. You are experiencing lonely attachment. And lonely attachment can be more addictive than being alone, because it gives you just enough to stay, but not enough to rest. If this kind of clarity helps your nervous system settle, subscribe. PsychBond is a daily decoder for psychology, relationships, and avoidant and anxious attachment patterns, so you stop guessing. Now, let us break down why loneliness feels safer than love. The first reason is familiarity. The nervous system does not automatically choose what is good for you. It often chooses what it recognizes. If you learned early that love came with distance, inconsistency, emotional absence, criticism, pressure, or unpredictability, then loneliness inside connection may not feel strange to your body. It may feel familiar. It may feel like home, even if it hurts. This is why people can stay in relationships that make them feel emotionally alone. It is not because they want pain, it is because the pain has a map. The body knows how to survive it. Real connection, on the other hand, can feel unfamiliar. Real connection asks you to be seen. It asks you to receive. It asks you to let someone notice your needs without apologizing for them. It asks you to stop performing control. It asks you to stop proving your worth. It asks you to trust that closeness does not have to end in punishment, pressure, abandonment, or engulfment. For someone with an avoidant pattern, that can feel dangerous. For someone with an anxious pattern, that can feel too good to trust. So instead of moving toward real connection, both nervous systems often move back toward what they know. The avoidant person moves back toward distance. The anxious person moves back toward pursuit, waiting, guessing, and overgiving. And both people end up lonely again, but at least the loneliness feels predictable. That is the hidden comfort. Predictable pain can feel safer than unpredictable love. A lonely pattern can feel safer than a vulnerable relationship because the lonely pattern gives you a role. If you are avoidant, your role is to stay contained, stay distant, stay in control, stay untouched by too much need. If you are anxious, your role is to try harder, read the signs, keep the bridge alive, manage the distance, and hope the connection turns into something safer. Those roles hurt, but they are familiar. Real connection removes those roles. It says, you do not have to hide. You do not have to chase. You do not have to disappear. You do not have to prove. You can be here. And strangely, that kind of safety can feel threatening when your body is used to surviving through tension. The avoidant side of this pattern is often misunderstood. People think avoidants choose loneliness because they do not want love. But many avoidant people do want love. They want closeness. They want to be understood. They want comfort. They want a person who feels safe to them. But the moment love starts asking for emotional presence, the moment connection starts needing consistency, vulnerability, repair, naming feelings, or considering another person's heart, their system can begin to read love as pressure. This is the avoidant contradiction. They may hate loneliness, but they trust distance. They may miss connection, but they trust control. They may want warmth, but they do not trust the responsibility that comes with being close. So loneliness becomes the place where they can breathe. It is not happy. It is not fulfilling. It is not real peace. But it is less demanding than intimacy. It does not ask them to explain. It does not ask them to stay emotionally open. It does not ask them to feel the impact of their behavior. It does not ask them to be known in real time. And for the anxious partner, that silence does not feel like peace. It feels like a void they are desperate to fill, which often pushes the avoidant person even deeper into the loneliness they call safety. Loneliness may hurt them, but it does not expose them in the same way love does. That is why avoidant distance can look so confusing from the outside. They may pull away, then feel empty. They may miss you, then avoid you. They may want comfort, then reject the conversation that would create safety. They may feel lonely, but when you come closer, their fear of being needed can become louder than their fear of being alone. So they choose the loneliness they can control over the love they cannot control. The painful part is that this can make them seem colder than they actually are. Sometimes they are not calm. They are defended. Sometimes they are not free. They are isolated. Sometimes they are not over it. They are back inside the only place where their nervous system knows how to feel safe. Emotional distance. But emotional distance is not the same as healing. It is only the absence of immediate pressure. And if someone keeps choosing that absence every time real closeness asks something of them, they may call it peace, but it is often protected loneliness. The anxious side of the pattern has its own version of lonely comfort. Anxious attachment usually does not choose loneliness by walking away. It chooses loneliness by staying where emotional connection is not fully available. The anxious person may stay in a relationship where they feel alone because at least the person is still there in some form. At least there is access. At least there is a thread. At least there is a message sometimes. At least there is history. At least there is a possibility that one day the closeness will become real. And when losing access feels like emotional death, lonely connection can feel safer than clean separation. This is the anxious contradiction. They may hate feeling alone in the relationship, but being completely without the relationship feels even worse. They may know they are emotionally underfed, but crumbs can feel better than an empty table when the fear of abandonment is active. They may know the love is inconsistent, but inconsistency still offers moments of relief. And those moments of relief can keep them attached to a bond that does not actually nourish them. So the anxious person keeps reaching. They keep explaining. They keep waiting. They keep reading tone. They keep trying to become easier to love. They keep hoping that if they ask in the right way, stay calm enough, prove enough, soften enough, wait long enough, the person will finally meet them. But underneath all that effort is a deep loneliness. The loneliness of being the one who keeps trying to turn access into intimacy. The loneliness of having feelings that are too big for the space the other person offers. The loneliness of being close enough to hope, but not close enough to rest. This is where the pattern becomes cruel. The avoidant person may choose loneliness to avoid pressure. The anxious person may accept loneliness to avoid loss. And together, they create a relationship where both people are lonely, but for different reasons. One person is lonely behind a wall. The other is lonely outside the wall. One person is protecting themselves from being swallowed. The other is trying not to be abandoned. One person says, "I need space." The other hears, "I am losing you." One person says, "I feel pressured." The other hears, "My needs are dangerous." One person retreats into themselves. The other retreats from themselves. And the relationship becomes a loop where neither person is truly connected, but both people are still attached. That is why this is a pattern breakdown, not a blame session. The issue is not that one person is evil and the other is innocent. The issue is that both nervous systems are treating loneliness as protection. The avoidant nervous system says, "Loneliness protects me from being needed too much." The anxious nervous system says, "This lonely bond protects me from the terror of total loss." Both are trying to survive. But survival is not connection. Comfort is not the same as safety if it keeps you emotionally alone. Familiar pain is not the same as love just because you know how to live inside it. This is the part many people do not want to face. Sometimes the relationship feels comfortable not because it is healthy, but because the pain has become predictable. You know the rhythm. They pull away, you panic. They soften, you calm down. They get close, you hope. They feel pressure, they pull away again. The loop hurts, but it is recognizable. Real connection would require something different. It would require the avoidant person to stay present when their system wants to disappear. It would require the anxious person to stop abandoning themselves to keep access. It would require both people to stop treating loneliness as the safer option. And that is scary, because real connection removes the familiar script. It asks both people to meet in a place neither of them can fully control. For the avoidant person, real connection means letting someone matter without turning that need into a threat. It means saying, "I am overwhelmed, but I am not leaving." It means learning that closeness does not have to mean losing freedom. It means understanding that someone's needs are not automatically an attack. It means staying in the conversation long enough for the relationship to become safer. For the anxious person, real connection means no longer accepting emotional loneliness just because access is available. It means asking, do I feel met here or only attached? It means learning that a bond can be intense and still not be nourishing. It means understanding that losing access to someone who cannot show up is not the same as losing love that was truly holding you. And if you have ever told yourself, maybe I am just asking for too much, listen closely to this part, because that thought is one of the anchors that keeps lonely attachment alive. There is also a quiet reason this pattern can last longer than people expect. Lonely comfort does not always feel dramatic enough to leave. It can look like normal life. You still talk, you still care, you still share jokes. You still have moments where the bond feels warm. You still remember why you chose them. And because the pain is not constant, you keep doubting yourself. You tell yourself, maybe I am asking for too much. Maybe this is just how relationships are. Maybe real connection is not supposed to feel easy. Maybe I should be grateful for the good moments. But a relationship does not have to be terrible every day to be emotionally lonely. Sometimes the harm is in the gap between what exists and what your heart keeps needing. Sometimes the loneliness is not loud. It is the quiet feeling of editing yourself before you speak. It is the quiet ache of knowing which topics will make them disappear. It is the quiet exhaustion of feeling responsible for keeping the bond from falling apart. It is the quiet grief of being loved in small flashes, but not met in a steady way. That kind of loneliness can be hard to name because there are still good moments to point to. But good moments are not the same as real connection if the relationship cannot hold your truth after the moment ends. A soft day does not erase a lonely pattern. A warm text does not replace emotional presence. A calm weekend does not mean both people are safe if no one can talk about what keeps hurting. This is the deeper question. Are you choosing connection, or are you choosing the version of loneliness that feels easiest to tolerate? Avoidance may choose the loneliness of distance. Anxious people may choose the loneliness of waiting. Both can call it safety because both are avoiding a deeper fear. But the body knows. The body knows the difference between peace and numbness. The body knows the difference between rest and shutdown. The body knows the difference between closeness and access. The body knows when a relationship is giving you presence and when it is only giving you enough hope to keep you tied to absence. If you are anxious, you may feel this in the ache after a good moment. You get the text, you get the call, you get the night together, you get the softness. But then the loneliness returns because the real pattern did not change.
And your body starts to understand that the moment gave you comfort, but not connection. That ache is not proof that you are needy. It is proof that your body knows the safety was temporary, not real change. If you are avoidant, you may feel this in the quiet after you pull away. You get your space, you get your control. You get the relief of no one asking anything from you. But then the emptiness returns, because distance protected you from pressure, not from loneliness. And your body starts to understand that space gave you comfort, but not connection. This is the shared trap. Both people confuse the relief of their protective strategy with safety. The avoidant person feels relief when they create distance,
so they think distance is safety. The anxious person feels relief when they regain access, so they think access is safety. But relief is not always safety. Relief is sometimes only the nervous system escaping what scared it. The avoidant escapes pressure. The anxious escapes abandonment. But neither escape creates real connection by itself. Real connection is not the absence of pressure. Real connection is not the absence of abandonment panic. Real connection is the presence of emotional truth, consistency, mutual care, repair, and the ability to stay human when closeness gets uncomfortable. This is why lonely comfort can become so dangerous. It can keep the relationship alive while preventing it from becoming real. The avoidant person may stay nearby enough to avoid feeling completely alone, but far enough to avoid vulnerability. The anxious person may stay hopeful enough to avoid grieving, but hurt enough to never feel secure. And both people can mistake this for love, because there is still emotion there. But emotion alone is not connection. Longing is not connection. Missing someone is not connection. Wanting them is not connection. Being unable to let go is not connection. Connection requires emotional meeting. It requires two people being willing to exist in the same truth at the same time. It requires more than chemistry, history, attraction, longing, or a nervous system reaction. It requires the ability to show up. That is where comfort versus real connection becomes clear. Comfort says, "At least I know this pain." Connection says, "I want something that can actually hold me." Comfort says, "If I stay distant, I cannot be overwhelmed." Connection says, "I can be close and still have myself." Comfort says, "If I keep access, I will not be abandoned." Connection says, "I do not need to abandon myself to keep someone near." Comfort says, "Do what is familiar." Connection says, "Do what is honest." Comfort may soothe you in the short term, but connection changes what your body learns over time. If loneliness feels safer than love, the goal is not to shame yourself for that. The goal is to understand what your body is calling safe. Is it safe because it is healthy, or safe because it is familiar? Is it safe because you can rest, or safe because you already know how to survive it? Is it safe because you are emotionally met, or safe because you are not risking anything new? Those questions matter because a nervous system can call many things safe that are actually just known. The anxious person may call the relationship safe because at least they still have access. But access is not the same as being held. The avoidant person may call distance safe because no one is asking anything from them. But distance is not the same as being free. Both people have to learn a new kind of safety, a safety that is not built on pursuit or withdrawal, a safety that is not built on silence, guessing, waiting, disappearing, over-explaining, or emotional self-protection. And this is where the pattern starts to change. Not by forcing love to feel safe overnight, but by teaching your nervous system a different kind of safety, one that does not require you to chase, disappear, wait, or shut down to survive. A safety that can hold closeness without panic and space without abandonment. This is the real work. For the avoidant side, the work is learning that connection does not have to be a cage. You can have boundaries without disappearing. You can need space without making the other person feel erased. You can feel overwhelmed without turning cold. You can be honest before you shut down. You can let someone love you without treating their care like a demand you must escape. For the anxious side, the work is learning that access is not enough. You can love someone and still admit they are not meeting you. You can miss someone and still stop calling loneliness connection. You can want the bond and still choose your nervous system. You can feel the fear of loss without handing your whole self to a relationship that keeps you emotionally alone. And for both sides, the work is learning that real connection is not supposed to feel like a constant threat. It may feel unfamiliar at first. It may feel slower. It may feel less dramatic. It may not come with the same high as reunion after distance, or the same relief as space after closeness. But that does not mean it is boring. It may mean your nervous system is not being activated in the old way. This is hard for anxious and avoidant dynamics because both can become addicted to the pattern. The anxious person may confuse the intensity of longing with love. The avoidant person may confuse the relief of distance with truth. Then both people keep returning to the same loop because the loop gives them emotional signals they recognize. But real connection often feels quieter than the loop. It does not always create a dramatic high. It creates a steady place to land. It does not make you chase proof every day. It does not make you disappear to feel safe. It does not make one person the pursuer and the other the escape route. It lets both people become more honest, not more defended. So how do you begin to exit the loneliness trap? You stop asking only, "Do they love me?" That question may keep you stuck because the answer can be complicated. They may love you in the way they know how. They may feel attached. They may miss you. They may want you. They may be comforted by you. But the more important question is, do we create connection, or do we only manage loneliness together? Do we feel emotionally met, or do we only feel less alone for a while? Do we become safer after hard moments, or do we keep returning to our protective roles? Does closeness create more honesty or more fear? Does space create more trust or more distance? Does this bond help both of us grow, or does it keep both of us surviving? Those are the questions that break the pattern. And once you can ask those questions honestly, the final shift begins. You stop trying to force familiar loneliness to become love, and you start looking for the kind of connection that can actually meet you in real life. Because the goal is not to force love to work. The goal is to stop calling lonely attachment a relationship that can hold you. If you are constantly lonely inside the bond, that loneliness is information. If you feel more like yourself when you are away from the person than when you are close to them, that is information. If the relationship only works when you need less, ask less, feel less, or disappear more, that is information. If closeness always turns into pressure and space always turns into panic, the pattern is asking to be seen clearly. And seeing it clearly does not mean you have to hate the person. It means you stop romanticizing the wound. It means you stop calling familiar pain fate. It means you stop assuming that because the connection is intense, it must be safe. The final truth is this: loneliness can feel safer than love when love has been tied to fear. But real love should not leave you emotionally alone in order to keep the bond alive. Real connection may feel unfamiliar at first, but it does not require you to live in constant self-protection. It does not require the avoidant person to disappear to breathe. It does not require the anxious person to disappear from themselves to stay chosen. It does not make loneliness the price of keeping access. You are allowed to want a connection that feels calm without being empty, close without being suffocating, spacious without being abandoning, and loving without making you betray yourself. You are allowed to stop choosing the loneliness you know just because the love you need feels unfamiliar. Comfort can keep you alive inside a pattern. Real connection helps you stop surviving and start being met. If this helped your body feel a little safer, liking this video helps it reach someone else who needs this clarity. Welcome to PsychBond. You're safe here.